evening. Welcome to Investigator News. Well, I need to put me kind of equal there. There we go. Welcome to Investigator News, and I'm Ellie. I'm your host with William, a co-host tonight. And I brought him aboard because I think once he starts hearing what I have to say tonight, he'll have a lot to offer. And any questions you might have, I believe between the two of us, we should be able to answer. Now, this is part two. And if you didn't watch this morning's, you might go back and watch, and you'll get an idea of where I'm going with this. Um, um, okay, so this morning I went over how we need to kind of stand up, and that there is a plan that was written back in 1947, 1948 that I had found here a while back. Uh, I went back and looked. It was in 99, I believe. Um, no, I'm sorry, 2019. And so I'm nervous tonight, folks. I'm really nervous on this one. Um, and where I left off was I mentioned Obama and the healthcare. Now, I believe when he put this healthcare system together, it was to see how many people would go for universal healthcare, maybe a one world order healthcare. I don't think he expected so many to jump on because the system wasn't up and working. So, the truth in the long run, the Democrat Socialists wanted to end capitalism, and now is the author is self-identified. The Democrat Socialists, they go on to explain that their intent for pushing Medicare for all, and many observers seeing groups like the DSA pushing for policies like Medicare for all, or medical system for all, and more they're putting people on the Medicare system and pulling away from Medicare to pay for it. So um, we must actually just be um, looking at the new deal that the liberals are trying to put forward. And this is how they say this is a new deal. This is a new uh, democratic socialism. This is all new. And they keep saying that over and over again. And so what I was thinking was, if they keep saying that this is um, the medical, one world medical or socialist medical, there's got to be something behind this. And um, what they wanted to do was not to rein in the excesses of capitalism. That was the big thing. And for a few decades at a time, we went to the end of society's um, um, push for the market for Medicare, one world Medicare, and it goes on. So it isn't real socialism, is what they said, and not to be confused with giant welfare state. The real goal in the future, according to the Democrat Socialists, is you would get something like what the British had. Am I right? Um, they were pushing that they have it, Canada has it, but ours is going to be different. And see, that's when I knew something was up. Um, and I tell you, because Americans won't uh, go for it if they know it's a lie, and we're very smart. And I truly believe that once they remember, he said, no one's going to pay over $2,500. No one's going to be denied. Well, we found out that was different. And I found out very quickly because a friend of mine at the electric company, she said, you know what? I'm paying, I am now paying over $2,800 a year for my medical because of where I work and the money I make. So it wasn't Medicare for all. No one will pay over. It meant the poor people wouldn't. And so this is very important that you guys know this, because it was all just it was false. Why was it false? Because it was a test, another test. Now, um, The purpose of Obamacare really is a Trojan horse for a single. Um, well, it's not really a Trojan horse. It's right. It's it was a farce. It was a farce, and Obama knew this, and so did Joe Biden. You got to remember when you mention Obama, you better add Biden to it because he knew about it. He's not a stupid man, and I said this morning. And to we're going to slowly move away from the reliance of employment-based health insurance. That's what happened. As and not to oh boy, um, people weren't supposed to lose their private insurance. They did, or the private insurance was so high that they had to walk away from it. And people had to pay, like me, um, before Obamacare. I didn't have to pay for anything. It was all covered 100%. When Obamacare started, I had to start paying 20%. They covered 80, I got 20, and it put me in debt. It put me in debt, especially when I have a neurologist that wants an MRI every 3 to 4 years. So 80% of it was hundreds of dollars I had to come up with. And so it wasn't covered. None of this was covered. It was a farce. So, and I don't want to get into the whole Obamacare thing. So the
Ellie,
yeah, go ahead.
before we go on, we need to make note of the Obamacare was written based on a medical mandate in Massachusetts that was written by the Republican governor there by the name of Romney. So I think we need to acknowledge that first.
Mm-hmm. So eventually, what we seen was Obama start after all of that was said, and the Obamacare was a thing, and it went into the wayside. Eventually, what I was hearing was overthrowing capitalism, and no matter how hard you try to spin it, three systems: communist, socialism, and fascism, are all rooted in the same leftist Marxist ideology, and they view capitalism as the enemy, and all favor the collective over the individual, and they all end in tyranny. Okay, so what I mean by that, folks, is when Obama got past this whole medical thing and he was moving on, we started seeing the changes. We started seeing the cards he had in his hand. And it was all about getting rid of capitalism. We knew he was a Marxist. We knew. This was part of his history. This is what Dinesh D'Souza had brought out. So we knew that this was a leftist Marxist ideology. And so, and of course, the Democrats are okay with that because the thing about it is if you mention socialism back there, back in that time, they would kind of just ignore you. And so it was, they had to keep this kind of, we don't know nothing about this. And it's amazing because there's two great lies in the modern era. And the first one is, oh, the devil doesn't exist. Really? The second is fascism. Has there anything to do with political right here in America? Has nothing to do with it. Socialism, communism, fascism, they are all kissing cousins. And if the socialism is a common denominator in every single time, it has this for track record for forever. Um, well, I can't say forever. It's something that in the beginning of 1900 that was being discussed. And the only thing being done is control. The thing is when you have this in place, it's control of a person, a group, And they always want to come forward in the midst with two different kinds of scenarios: time of great suffering or time of great prosperity. Okay. So, what they're going to do is while we're down, they're going to push all kinds of scenarios to us. But it's always going to be an oppressive scenario. Lenin and Hitler and Mussolini and Mao, all of them came during great times of great suffering and would ultimately pale in comparison to the suffering that they'd endure under socialism. If you are somebody and you don't know um, um, what the Democrats are putting forward and you don't understand it, they're basically snowballing you. And they, when it came forward for Hillary, that's when we started seeing that this was a socialist thing, and everybody was okay with it. Um, you know, um, they wanted to make Hillary sound very boring and very like she was the victim of Trump. And the thing about it was, in the meantime, when she was doing that, they were plotting this whole socialism agenda. And like I've told you before on the show, Obama set it up, and Hillary was supposed to take over and move in. Why? Because she's part of the globalist system. And, um, uh, the leftists will refuse to blame socialism now. Unlike Russia, Germany, China, Venezuela, socialism is actually, um, they think historically prosperity was a part of this. And, it's crazy. But, if you look at Venezuela of 1950, there wasn't any other country in South America at the time more prosperous and more promise and hope. It was really reeling from the discovery of oil from World War One that revealed that Venezuela was sitting on top of the largest oil reserve in the world, over 300 billion barrels to give. Um, just how, not only that, but Saudi Arabia only has 266 billion oil reserves at that time. And the United States at that time only had 33 billion. So to call Venezuela an oil juggernaut at the time, the world's largest exporter, it was an understatement, but that was in 1950. And a lot of us weren't even born then. So, and it wasn't written in the history books. But if you were a historian and interested, you go look. But it wasn't until we started seeing all the problems in the United States that I started looking into it, and so did a few others. The Venezuelan people were the fourth richest in the world per capita GDP, and the United States capitalism was working for Venezuela and the people. They were capitalist, and the everything was fine. It was a good place to be. So what really happened? Things in 1970, that's when everything really began to change. It was oil boom, and this was 2 decades before Hugo Chavez comes and the leftists begin to infiltrate the government and the Democratic Action Party. Notice the word Democrat. They are preaching all the same things socialists usually do. It used to, um, they what they wanted to do was nationalize it, and the oil and the steel and the industry systems, and um, that had been working and was very responsible for the riches of Venezuela economic miracle. But now it's being turned into a new direction. And look at what we see. It crumbled into riots. Um, and, all the workers went on strike at that time. And what had happened is it was time for Hugo Chavez to get in. He was elected president in 1998. And the riots went on and on and on. They didn't like where the country was going. They were rich. Now they were being brought down. In 1998, when he got in, then we started seeing them starting to demonize the rich. They started going after large corporations and landowners. So in 2001, he created the Enabling Act. And this is what gave him the power to begin seizing property, and the wealth of large estates, and they were just being
Now,
gobbled up. Okay, go ahead.
so in Nazi Germany, they created the Enabling Act as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All right. So capitalism, both the government and industry were exposed. And Chavez consolidated his power, even nationalized all the telecommunications industry. He stifled all the negative media. Uh, so, or they either had to do his propaganda or they were taken down and they were silenced. And now they were alienated and kicked out of the country. And this is told to me by my own um, media, my journalists and my reporters. They told me that. And so he poured millions into fund social programs that kept everybody quiet and happy, and at least till he ran out of other people's money. So in 2013, Venezuela already ranked number one in the world. Well, the misery index just took 2 years later, and inflation has risen 100%. It took, it was approximately 3 years for the fall of Venezuela. 90% of the population is now living in poverty. And back in 2019, it looks a lot different than what it looked like in 1950 in their heyday. And so 10 million um, uh, wait a minute now. It basically hit an inflation. If you look at the percentages, it's like 10 million%. Worse than Zimbabwe average monthly. So, um, to so what they get is they make about $5 a month, or in between $5 and $20 a month is what I'm hearing. Now, if they want to go get some eggs, let's say 12 eggs, that's going to cost them $2. So if they only have $20 a month, you take away $2, that's 18. So they're chasing. So they ended up chasing down cows in open fields. They're desperate for food. Uh, see what's going on. And what had happened was the 3 years is when the socialists successfully infiltrated one of the most prosperous nations in the entire world. They turned it upside down, post apocalyptic wasteland. They turned against their own people, but then the people turned against one another. And it was because of what the government was doing. So there's two different angles. If you look back, Venezuela for a second, leftists had infiltrated the government as far back as the 70s. And get this, uh, Chavez is a big hero to our Democrat senators and congressmen. A lot of them, like Pelosi and Harris, and quite a few others. They began setting the stage for socialism for the first national and the industries that went along with it. So there was social programs and a lot of public offices, a lot of they're going to take care of their people their way. And so when the labor strike and the riots with Hugo Chavez was basically, um, it was right in the during the era of the Obama administration, what leftists call the pincer strategy. And this is when we saw the rise of crime. So when we left Venezuela, or when we look at Venezuela and then we move on to the United States, we start seeing the same strategies that were happening back then, we were starting to see over here with Obama. We saw the rise of crime and riots and demonizing the police officers, the financial crisis of 2008, um, the ultimate linchpin is what this was, and waiting for you to need a crisis. And what I say by that is We needed a crisis to hit to hit the United States so he could further his agenda. And so we really did need a crisis. And it was the economic downturn, um, it, the same idea that led Chavez to take the downfall. So if you compare what happened to Chavez and you see what happened with Obama, it's running parallel. And the thing is people say, who the hell do I blame for this? They're saying it's evil. He was evil, but then they got Maduro and they got a few others, and they were just as bad. And they were like, wait a minute, it's not the men, it's the system that is screwed up their economy. And this is something that's never really been looked at. And the Obama administration, filled with radicals at the time, we started seeing that we were funding radicals both at the top level and the bottom level. Um, and this is an Obama quote. I think it expresses the frustrations of the American people feel that we had the biggest financial crisis. And since the Great Depression, huge collateral damage all through the country, all across Main Street. And yet you're still seeing some of the same folks who acted irresponsibly trying to fight the efforts to crack down on abusive practices. They are the ones that got us into this problem in the first place. And I think the American people are frustrated. And the protesters are giving a voice. Um, so what did he do? He blamed it on the previous administration, just like they've always done. And then they say, oh, look at all these protesters. So let the protesters protest, let them riot, let them burn, because it's the frustration of the people. So he just legitimized Marxist movement back then. And I seen it. That's when I said, oh no, no more Obama for Ellie. I'm not going to go for this. And then when I found out he was Marxist, and I really didn't want to go for that. Now, do you remember when President Obama actually praised Black Lives Matter? He quoted raising policy issues. Um, he praised them for how well they were organized, how well they marched, and how it was so peaceful. Well, we'd heard that before with the Muslims. Oh, yeah, peaceful protesters. Well, then it turned into riots. And did he do anything? No, no, he didn't. And I don't want to stick too far on this because I really do want to get to explaining this plan that will help you begin to understand what they're doing. Um, let's see. Did you want to say anything, William?
So this plan isn't just for the United States or Venezuela. This plan is that they created is to bring down all the nation states globally. That's all I needed to say.
Okay, let me get to this now. I get it. Everybody knows I get ahead of myself on my notes. So, okay, let's see. It sounds like you got a bird now.
It was Miss Minky shaking.
Oh, it sounded like a bird. Okay. So when I look back now, um, basically, let's see. Okay, so what I wanted to do tonight is I mentioned this to William earlier, is to look at Czechoslovakia and when it crumbled. And see, because they were the same as Venezuela. They were booming after World War II. Um, and now some of the people there, they still had poor people, but it was getting like the United States was under Trump, where we started seeing less unemployment, less poor, and more people starting to have work, have money, starting to prosper, starting to um, 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 have their own riches, their own businesses, and they were growing. They went from a poor class to almost a middle class. And so back in during Czechoslovakia, it was much different. Now in 1918, Prague, there was a new nation that was born, and this is when Czechoslovakia was born, I believe. And it was a free market economy and was one of the most robust in the world. Now, the National Socialists or Nazis and International Socialists and the Communists rolled in, but it was at the end of World War One at the time, and the Allies carved Czechoslovakia out of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So, so what you're looking at is the Hungarian people with the Czechoslovakian people, and it was a mixture, and it had the new nation's first democratically elected president, Masaryk. And the founding father of the Czechoslovakia spent a lot of time in the United States, where he grew to admire the model of democracy. And now, under him, the leadership started on off on the right foot, and it was really good for a while. And he maintained it. And he needed at least 50 years to establish a firm foundation. So after decades, um, we've seen an increase of 52% in industrial production. The armaments industry, the largest in Europe ever. They were the most advanced in the world for that time. And not only that, but it was a free and open market. And it was freely traded with all Western European agricultural productions. And so the region was very rich. And they went from 38,000 unemployed to almost nothing, nothing. It was like what we've seen with Trump. So I think this is where the Democrats are getting very fearful, is because they seen this is kind of when this plan was kind of hatched up, and the Democrats are started to see with Trump that he could possibly do this and would put them back. Get this, 20 years of what they had just planned, and they knew if he got in a second term that it would set them back so far they wouldn't be able to use this plan and be able to snooker up the rest of us. Now, what had happened is once um, we had not only Germany come in, but then the Soviets came in, and they started um, after World War II. Um, they started looking that Germany took over and they suppressed them. The Soviet Union came in and brought in socialism. And within, guess what? 3 years, that country fell. It crumbled. And you know, isn't that what I just said about Venezuela? So things started looking really bad. And by the end of the pre-World War II, levels of the nation were actually looking good. At the end of World War II, then it was like blood was dripping in the streets, because it just totally went from a wonderful economic system to a crumble, and for them to be looking for food on the streets once again. So, and not only that, but when they did protest, and they imprisoned 250 people, 250,000 people, because they didn't like this new socialist idea. Families were blacklisted by the communist government for any reason. They blocked them from getting jobs or getting higher education. And even all the monasteries in the country were basically being attacked. And so that's pretty much what we've seen with Czechoslovakia. Now, at the time, then there's this plan that actually came out. William, did you want to say anything before I get onto this plan?
Yeah, so the beginning of World War II started, I believe, with the killing of Archduke created Ferdinand in Czechoslovakia. Just sharing.
Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to get to my.
Or maybe that was World War I. Somebody will check me one way or the other, but that was something that happened in Czechoslovakia that moved the world.
So, what we started seeing here is the same thing that we started seeing in Venezuela and Czech. What was the first one of the first stages they do is they want to rile up the people. They want the people and the leaders actually get their own. They called them subjects, or they called them their with Venezuela, it'd be the people that were in support of this. They would get them to intimidate or spiritually terrorize people. And what did we see with Maxine Waters? Go get them, go harass them, go follow them, go and attack. And not only were we not getting, we were getting it from her, but there was other in the Democrat Party that was doing this. So that is one of the first things. And not only that, but then they start riots in the street to cause chaos. And this is also what we seen. So now we get to the plan. It brings me to how did they do this to Czechoslovakia and Venezuela? And how did they flip the country in 3 years? Well, culture was number one. Culture is the biggest threat, their first target of attack. Step one in the overall plan of the idea, attacking culture as an open salvo, and actually ripped from another communist name. There was an Antonio Gramsci. He stated that capitalist countries were too much rooted in the culture of capitalism, and to initiate a workers' revolution on their own for a government to flip, you first had to attack the culture at the core. And so the first thing in this plan, okay, this is what's listed in this plan that came out in 1947. Their first approach, the churches, the unions, mass media, universities, corporations, foundations. They promoted open sexuality and freedom in 1948. What's that mean? They charged religious leaders with public crimes, said they were manipulating the government behind the scenes. They painted the churches outdated, racist, bigoted, old-fashioned, a brick in the face of progress. Well, it wasn't long before the people were quite literally losing their faith, thinking that maybe we are being the church is old fashioned. Maybe the church is too in the heretics, and we need to have be able to hold hands and kiss in public. And so that's the first thing. Now, the Department of Agriculture at the time represented one of the largest businesses in the country. Agriculture at the time was doing great, but set up, oh boy, set up a peasant commissions in local villages. Okay, now we're folks. If you don't get confused, okay, this isn't nowadays. This is the plan in 1947 and 48 that they used on Czechoslovakia. And so they said the local villages that constantly criticized the capitalist culture and of profit of wealth. And they were saying, those are the wealthy people. The capitalist only makes rich people. And they said that it was discriminated against the poor, farmers, and laborers. So the culture began to turn completely upside down. Now, step two, this was number two on the list, was to ensure that any kind of republic-style democracy would never be the possibility. Direct democracy was the instrument of social revolution. It credited the democracy, giving a quote to a rise of far-reaching political, economic, social, and cultural changes in the country. And they were building and whipping up a reactionary mob to direct democracy. And this would be the tool that ultimately transformed the country overnight. Now, step three, what a surprise, gun control. It was crucial that step three, the reports state that these guns for the masses had to be outlawed. Those were the quote, responsible would be the only ones allowed to have a firearm. Well, guess who the responsible was? The interior within the government. And it was nearly fully infiltrated by socialists at that time. And they built up their own police force because the police force didn't agree with them. Neither did their small military. And of course, they had to bring in um, their own type of police force. And this is kind of what I've been hinting at over the last few weeks. They, of course, are responsible for the ones in the government who were the socialists and those that agreed, and then the newly formed Marxist militias that were beginning to appear in rural areas, and everyone else had to surrender their guns. So it wasn't really the police that was in these cities. It wasn't the military. It was Marxist, formed Marxist militias that began to start making them surrender their gun. Now, number four was the popularization of the revolutionary demands. And we're really good at creating this. It's a plan called for the program of building, which was framed as progress. It was also, and this is stated in this 1947 thing, building back building back the progress for it to be a better country, and to redistribute the wealth of the land and the nationalize of socialist politicians in the government. And they would send their plans directly to foot soldiers on the ground that would shame and go after any capitalist, any politician, any civilian that would vote against what they would say. They were considered wrong or liars, and they would spout this. They were voting against the will of the people, and they would turn them into it. They would out them in the media, and the media would shame them and would destroy them. And they claimed they had been bought by wealthy businessmen or farmers. Turning control over to the government was a progress. The private ownership was deemed against the people. And now, one example of how effectively they manipulated the masses is by proposing millionaires' levy, better known as the millionaire wealth tax. Now, like I said, folks, this is back then. Are we starting to see? You starting to see the connections to what we have going on now? It's known as the millionaire wealth tax. It didn't have anything to do with giving money to the poor. It was all about manipulation and isolating capitalists and their businesses to take them down and make them quit. And it was instantly branded as anti-people, anti-poor. You're an anti-oppressor. The document marveled at the success of how effectively this manipulation really worked. And it was important to um, isolate the people so they wouldn't want to talk about it. They wouldn't want to come forward. They wouldn't go against this other party or this leader. And of course, the millionaire levy alone tabled in the government by the communists in 1947. At first rejected by the majority, I'm sorry. And then it was all just a con. It was a manipulative, isolated tactic. The last step was to initiate the bottom up, and they mobilized the ground game from the bottom up to coordinate with the government officials at the top. They created a laundry list of organization. Some of them were large, some of them national membership, some of them were small. And in small villages and town included a United Revolutionary Trade Union, the United Association of Czech Peasantry, the Associated of Liberal Political Prisoners, smaller peasantry commissions with direct coordination from socialists within the government. These small and large organizations held nationwide rallies, protests. They pressured businessmen and politicians to toe the party line. And if that strayed, or you were in a business and you didn't go along, all of a sudden you didn't have a business. It was torched. It was you were rioted. What they now it's called rioting. Back then it was like a revolution or an uprising. And not only that, they publicly shamed or um, they gathered up people like small churches and run them out, or they would burn the churches. So this was their 5-year plan, they said, but it only took them 3 years to flip a country. And the results came swiftly, brutally. And keep in mind, this is 1945 to 47. It was a capitalist country that protected private ownership. So, American, um, the American, what we see now is almost the same thing. Um, and not only that, but one of the last steps they did is was the industry to become nationalized, and it be a nationalized land from large farm owners had been completely liquidated and given to people in 1948. Communist control had become so great that they grabbed what little power was left. Many called upon the final power grab um, as an outright coup, and what was strong economy that it began to crumble overnight. That's what they said. It felt like, but it was actually within 3 years. And yeah, they did start digging ditches and shooting people. The people of Czechoslovakia, they would endure this hell for 40 years. For living in Eastern Europe during that time, the stories of living under this repressive socialists is strikingly and horribly similar to a couple of things, um, just like this plan. But I have been shocked how far down the road we are, how quick our country has changed. Has anyone really noticed how fast all of this is happening? Well, that's what happened to Czechoslovakia too. They did by 3 years. They their company their country was crumbling. They couldn't recognize what they were seeing. How did it go from a country that couldn't even admit they were socialists, and then all of a sudden start calling us racist? And to think that Van Jones, a former communist, might be a radical a few years ago, now people coming out saying capitalism is over. Uh, first, um, how we first how is this being implemented? And um, um, and I say it's starting off with the culture, like step one I read to you, going after um, the churches, the farmers, causing riots in the street, causing chaos. This is exactly what happened with this plan, and this plan is in print. So this is something that is out there. William, did you want to add anything?
So the plan there started in the 40s. The plan
Mm-hmm.
here in the United States started happening about 64. So it was only 20 years later. It's
Mm-hmm.
where we got people like, Jane Fonda, and we got Haight Ashbury, and we got all kinds of different attacks upon our culture.
Now, get this. You mentioned Jane Fonda and stuff. Now, a lot of people don't realize this. William, I know you've mentioned Goldwater. Um, Hillary Clinton was a Goldwater girl. But then when we find out about the protests that were going on, it wasn't just her. We're talking many Democrats that are now in office were with her and Jane Fonda during the protests in the 60s and 70s. And a lot of people don't realize that. These are people that go way back. These are people that have put a plan in place for them to be very, very rich. And they're greedy. They're greedy. Um, Real quick, I really appreciate those right now that are watching. And this is very useful. Um, and we are seeing, by the time we get done with this show, you'll see that we're being silenced. And, honestly, we need to stand together. And it's what's going on right now as we speak. Um, we are starting to see the poor not have any food. And I'm talking in this country. But does it matter? No, it does not matter. So I appreciate all of you tonight doing this. And all I ask is to share. Um, I want the
Ellen,
support. Go ahead.
when they started attacking capitalism, that's a nasty word for the rich, making money in a
Hmm.
system. But really what it is free enterprise. Free enterprise allows any of us to start a small business. So that's the first red herring.
Hmm.
The next one is, of course, direct democracy rather than a republic that allows just a very few people to take over. It doesn't require many, many people over a long period of time. Then they seize the weapons. Of course, they always seize them because of uh, false flags, often done by foreign militias, whatnot. Then the next thing they want is control the food, and they do that through nationalizing the farms, farmland, whatnot, so they can control the food. And then there's always the terror on speech. Then there's
Hmm.
Revolutionary Guard, nationalizing industries, which they immediately drive into the ground. And
Hmm.
finally, just everybody's impoverished and has no capacity
Hmm.
to resist.
The biggest problem is the culture and the religion. This has been mentioned in the plan that would be the the main thing to attack, and that was step one. They have to attack our culture, and they have to attack the religion. The culture is due to the freedom of speech, like you were just saying. Um, oh, so in Venezuela, they started. Risking their lives to escape socialism. And I mentioned Venezuela earlier with Chavez. And so they started seeing their lives totally change. They seen, well, we seen it. Everybody's seen it on TV. Um, they started looking at prices high. They started looking at no gasoline, even though they've got reserves right there. Everybody knew it, but they weren't. They were cutting them off, and they weren't cutting them off for the Green New Deal. They just cut them off just to cut them off, and the food cost rising. Well, of course, the people would risk their lives to escape socialism, and a big chunk of that is the media that did this. The media and the propaganda of, oh, don't worry, this is, get this. They were even saying this is only temporary. This is how we're going to build. We're going to, it's going to falter because the previous president, he took all the money. And so now we're going to make this better. I'm going to build it back better. And I
Like,
hate, yeah, go ahead.
so the Venezuelans, this is the real kicker, is they couldn't get food. They were starving. So they bailed out of their country and went west to Colombia, and they started the same thing over again. They destroyed Colombia as well.
Yeah.
They didn't even realize that they were the infected thinkers that
Mm-hmm.
were destroying the country. They had already got that far, and and they couldn't see that they'd been brainwashed. And then they destroyed the next country next to them. And now they're flooding into the southern United States.
Mm-hmm. And so what we're seeing right now with everything going on as it stands with the rioting in the streets and the food prices going up, the gas prices going up, they're going to end fossil fuel. Well, welcome to 1947, because this is the playbook. That this is exactly where we're at right now with this playbook. And you got to start thinking outside the box. You have to look at the things and take people at their words, but your thoughts and your feelings, um, you might have to curb. You're gonna have to look at those, um, like this show that is trying to give you the truth. You're gonna have to take our word for it. Check us out when we tell you that, but check all of them out. Check every single one. I don't care. Check Alex Jones out. Check. Um, I don't know. I can't think of some of the others, but check them all out. Find out who's real and who's not. Just because YouTube says that it's false information, disinformation, or we have Garland telling us that, or Mary Poppins, singing, disinformation and misinformation, and she's going to sow uh, a whole bunch of falsities. And those are a few of their favorite things. Um,
Ellie,
yeah.
so I won't speak against a sitting administration in the time of war. You know that.
Mm-hmm.
But
I
when
will.
we're talking about Venezuela and we're talking about Czechoslovakia, look into the history of fascism. Look into the history of communism. Look into the history of
Marxism.
Nazism. You're going to see that the only thing that happens in the end is that there's top-down leadership and the people lose all power over their own autonomy every time.
But see, William, this isn't. I'm not taking this as a attack on a president. I'm doing this.
I know that, Ellie. I'm just talking about myself.
I know, but what this is, and I really want everyone to understand what I'm bringing forward to everybody tonight. This was a written plan in 1947 for the how to push socialism to move to communism in less than 5 years. And so, what we had seen so far, what I've been talking about, is I always tell you guys they do a trial run. Well, the first one was Czechoslovakia, and they seen they could do it in 3 years. So as we started to see Europe, it was happening all over Europe, and every country over there that kind of switched or tried out socialism began to falter. The next time they used it was on Venezuela, and it only took 3 years. So that's why, when you heard me talk this morning, that this is the plan. And look at how far they've gotten in 2 years. If they plan on taking this country down in 3 years, uh, there is a lot that's going to happen this next year. And everybody's going to have to strap on their seatbelts because it's going to be a ride.
Ellie,
Yeah.
this plan can come from any direction, by the way, not just the government.
Right.
It can come any place in society.
Right. But this was a particular plan that was written and document.
Right.
So, so now if to compare it to what I just read you in for 1947, 48, 45. So now let's look at what we're looking at now. Our revolution today, our culture is under attack. And that was, remember, the first one. It's happening to the church. It's happening to our religions, our liberty, our faith, organizations that are Christian organizations, freedom of speech. It's all under full frontal assault like attack, like never seen before. Uh, and the sex abuse scandals within the Catholic Church. It might be their own fault, but it's now being used to demonize not only the Catholic faith, but all Christian churches. Now, I don't know if you guys have noticed this. When the when the Catholic Church got in trouble for what the sexual escapades they were part of, then they started saying all churches must be like that. If the Catholic Church, being so pure, would do this, the rest of the religions must have followed suit. But not all Christians as a whole is going to do the same thing as the Catholics. But they did this for us to lose our faith. Um, and not only that, um, what we seen happening was they're getting crazy with this. These protesters are getting very crazy. And not only over here and with some of the churches they've been protesting, but over there. They, um, they have been attacking the churches nonstop, even over in Europe. And it was one of the first things on that plan that they not only did in Czech, but they did in Venezuela. And so we'd never in a million years have thought of this bottom up reaction like what we're seeing now. And people are starting to storm Catholic churches and harassing people over this Roe versus Wade. And guess what? Wait, I don't know if you guys um, seen the clip on it where they were going in and they were yelling at all the parishioners. You know what they cut out? And it's horrifying. What they cut out was they were passing out literature to the people sitting in their seats. And then they started yelling at them to repent and uh, turn away from Jesus Christ. Why? Because he's Satan, and the Pope is Satan, and Mary statues of Satan are Satan. And they were screaming and yelling this at these churches. If you've seen the protests where they're in the Catholic Church, that's what they were doing. They didn't show. Well, the media is not going to show you that. They're not going to show you they were yelling, "You're Satan. You're a demon because you belong to the Catholic Church, and your Jesus is a Satan." Wow! And you guess what? This was the LGBTQ whatever T thing. It was these people that did it. Now, what did the Catholic Church ever do to them? But bring it in, accept them, and say, you know what, maybe we'll change our views. And then we started seeing it was Cory Booker, Senator Booker, and he was talking to Pompeo, and when they were going to bring Pompeo in to the Trump administration, and all Booker wanted to know about his views on gay and lesbians, and how come he don't believe in it? Why is your lifestyle not want to believe in that? And and get this, Cory Booker even said, "I bet you think being gay is a perversion." And Pompeo was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! It's my opinion that a man and a woman are married. That's just my view." And he basically was saying that he was um let's see, I want to get this quote right. Okay, his last statement was, so he said, I agree with married couples. It doesn't matter. Gay couples were part of the CIA when Pompeo was a part of it. He treated them with the same exact way. He didn't treat them any different from anybody else. And Booker's last thing, so you believe that gay sex is a perversion. Folks, his credentials were not on trial here. His faith and his Christianity and what he believed, it never should have been brought up in this. Why and so when we even ask this new Supreme Court lady, what is a woman? Oh, I don't know. Well, that wouldn't have stood for Cory Booker. He would have been on her like flies if that was a Republican going for Supreme Court, and they have. This isn't Salem, folks. This isn't 1692. You know, the way I look at it is this was a witch trial. This wasn't a, um, it was like, are you a witch or are you a Christian? That's how I
Well,
took this. Go ahead.
it is kind of like 1692, except for this time it's the church that's on trial rather
Mm-hmm.
than the witch.
Yeah, it is. And this is, what I picked up from Booker. I don't like him. I can't stand that man. Um, and that's what it is. They're putting us under what they did to some of those girls that I guess ate rye bread. You're a witch. You're a witch. You're doing horrible things. And it was the own church people that was above all that came down on them. And but this time it's the politicians. And this is the leftist propaganda, and this is the tools they use to go after the churches. But not only that, they used it to do infiltration on the college campuses. And what it used to be, where you could go to college and you could talk about religion, you could talk about your political party, and that was back in the 80s. Something happened in the 90s, going into 2000. My only thing I could see is this new realm of liberal uh, teaching started to happen on the college campuses. And back
Really?
then, it was, hold on, there was about 50-50. And out of 9,000 professors right now, 51 of the top rated schools, they're looking at um, the faculty members of 108 will push the socialist agenda, and the number of conservatives that's able to communicate or even stand up is zero. Why? Because they will go and they will harass them till they quit. Go ahead.
So they've embodied a new religion and made it a state religion, which is actually anti-religion, and they call it the Green New Deal. And that's why I call this green thing that they're espousing to change the name of social control um, a cult. It's a cult religion, and they can't accept anybody who will demand logic as to why we should accept it.
Mm-hmm.
They can't tolerate it, and it's because there is no answer for that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a demand via emotion, and I call it a cult because you can't convince them otherwise.
No.
They're lost. They're gone.
Yeah. And now the other thing that is part of that was targeted in check as well, on the plan. It was culture, then you're talking agriculture. Look at what's happening with the farmers today. There is no reason we have a water shortage. And I mentioned this morning. When you stick a straw into a reservoir and you suck it dry and you don't put that water back in, you're going to have a water shortage. And if you were to look at the rich farming community in California that goes up the valley, it's no more. And more we're hearing farmers. Now get this. The drought is so bad from the Colorado River. There was about 20 years ago when we were seeing our American Indians that were having starvation issues. And it was the farmers that lived off of the reservation that got on tractors, and they went and they plowed up these fields for the Indians, and they gave them the farming equipment and said, this will help you. They started farming, and they were able to start seeing that the food the starvation was starting to not be as bad. Now, with the Colorado River needing, guess what? We need water for Las Vegas more than we do for the American Indians. We need water for all the people that live in LA. They didn't take into account when you build and build and build and build and build, you must have enough electricity, you must have enough water and resources to cover those that amount of people. This is something our government never looked at, or they did and they just let it happen. So now we're looking at a drought that we've never seen before. And this is how I feel they have targeted our agricultural is, and not only that, but when you go to uh, uh, question them on it, of course, you've got big tech jumping in and taking over. And right now, with Google and Twitter and Facebook and the others, there nobody can come in and be equivalent to Google because they won't let it happen. There won't be another Google platform or other platform. This has been well known for quite a few years. Big tech controls basically almost our First Amendment. And so anytime you want any politician or anybody wants to go against, don't mess with the churches, don't mess with the schools, don't mess with this, then it's always big tech that jumps in and uh, they will squash you. And get this, um, this was really media. If you remember Media Matters, there was a Media Matters conference where David Brock described in detail how they're collaborating with Facebook and Google and YouTube to secure raw data from everybody. Well, guess who his boss is at the time when this started? None other than Hillary Clinton. So, see, this everyone thinks that there's going to be another platform. Someone's going to come along bigger than Google. They're not going to let it happen. And why? Because it's part of this plan that um, you have to squash out the people's voice, and this is how they're doing it. Now, back in 1947, it wasn't. They didn't have big tech, but they do now, and it's almost the same. Instead of having protesters go to their house and burn them out, now we just have big tech that says community standards, and so that's what we're looking at. And not only that, but if you even question any of these fields, you're a racist. They'll even call you a heretic. They say this is science, but when you ask them about their science, they won't let you see their data. Um, so basically, we're losing the culture, and if we lose the culture, then we have pretty much, then that's the first step. And see, they want the culture. They want the first two to three steps all put into place because when they bring in that fourth step, as this plan says, then it's that final push, and this country will be like Czech, and it will be like Venezuela. And the thing is we were warned against this throughout our presidential history with Republican um, presidencies and president uh, their cabinet. Um, Also senators and congressmen that were in early years with the founding fathers. They, for some reason, it's almost like they foreseen this. And
Really?
yeah,
Eisenhower warned against it. Kennedy warned against it.
Reagan.
Reagan
Hmm.
warned against it,
It
and
goes
Trump
way
warned.
back. Yeah, Jefferson, I think, in ways did. Um, the thing about of a socialist revolution, and that's what we're in right now, is it always ends in slavery. And the tyrants, after seeing this plan fully put into place, that's what they're looking for. Um, and if we can fully expose this and tell just one person, it'll get out. And it's not really a surprise from the radicals right now that, like AOC and a few others, and Bernie Sanders, saying that the next step would be to change our voting laws or get rid of the electoral college. And then we would have power over America. And that was said by all of them. And
They
go ahead.
they want to take away from us a republic and give it to us and replace it with democracy. We're not
Right.
a democratic country. We're a republic, but they'll always call it a democracy because that's what they want.
And those that I mean, this is 2022. Now, back in 20, and back in the year 2000, they said they wanted to abolish the electoral college, but also change all the voting laws by 2020. Now, look at what we're seeing. So they said it 22 years ago, and they have all this time to work on it. And now they have gotten to where they just ignore the laws and they're writing in per state. They're ignoring federal laws and they're signing it in by state of um, of what they want their laws for the state to be, and it's only to alter the outcome. And that's why I'm so glad that we have got some that are going state to state and they're getting rid of this because it's illegal. And there's a simple solution. Um, um, that we just have to stick to what our Constitution and Bill of Rights say. And I think that's what Donald Trump was trying to get his point across with us. That if we take a look at the whole electoral college, in which case it's seating a man for president, um, uh, and not to see the most votes, but to see, and now get this, Hillary Clinton, they won on electoral vote really quick, but now they're against it. It's good, we've seen it, and I don't want to get all into rehashing this. It's they want it one way, and they don't want us to have it at all. It's their way or no way. So this is a direct democracy, and it's an end of freedom if they can get it their way. This electoral college, um, make a note for those calling for the abolishment of the electoral college. And I'm talking Republicans. Any of them that vote for this, that is the sign that they're actually a Democrat. And it's one of the crucial stages to the plan that has to be done. Um, and that was, like I said, part of the plan B. You might go back and listen to what I said with all the different steps. So this would be step two. Now, step three, the guns. Um, and, we know that they're going to go after them. They're going to, they have the for March for Their Lives. They have, every time there's a school shooting, they blame it on the guns. Um, they never look at, I've told you guys that they don't look at all the other shootings that happen. They don't look at the crime on the street. The thing is there's a school shooting. That's it. We got to take the guns. We got to take the assault weapons. Why are they so scared of assault weapons? You know what it is?
Ellie?
Let me finish real quick. I found out just this last week what they're afraid of is the scope on a rifle, on a handgun, on any gun. If there is a scope on it, it scares the hell out of them. Go ahead.
So there is no actual definition for assault weapon. There's only two differentiating things. There is a military weapon, which can be fully automatic, and then there are civilian weapons that can be semi-automatic, meaning for each bullet that goes downrange, the trigger has to be pulled once. Those are called semi-automatics.
Mm-hmm.
The others are just called single shots.
Mm-hmm.
that like a single shot shotgun or a pump shotgun or a revolver. Those are the only differentiating differences.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And as far as scopes go, those are hunting devices that have
Mm-hmm.
been used at time immemorial.
Well, see, William, they're claiming the West. Well, what my ladies at the Capitol say is what they're hearing is, you put a scope on that. It's not a hunting rifle no more. It becomes hunting for men or a man. What? I.
So most people on people crimes happen in close proximity. A scope would be of absolutely no use. In fact, it would slow you down
Yeah.
and take away your peripheral vision. You only use a scope in a safe environment.
Mm-hmm. And long distance. You remember the wasn't it a a a gentleman and his son that were getting on the freeways and they were shooting people or standing afar and shooting people? They don't even mention that anymore. If you guys remember the two, and they were African Americans, and it was a
That was
guy.
The Virginia shooter,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a man and his son, coincidentally from Oregon, and they made a small hole in the trunk of their sedan, and one acted as a spotter, and the other acted basically an assassin.
No, wasn't one on a free. Well, I don't want to get too far into that. So what we're looking at is now step 4. And what it is a wealth tax. Have we heard about that before? We heard about a wealth tax? Huh. And if there is a wealth tax, it's truly going from capitalism to socialism. What this does is this wealth tax, according to the original 47 plan, is it finishes off capitalism. It will take down the small business to the middle business, kind of like what we're looking, and I mentioned earlier, of where you have Home Depot and Ace Hardware's going down quick, or even the mom and pop hardware store. They no longer exist hardly. There's very
It,
few out there. So
it's
Home
going
Depot is going to
nationalized
win.
industry bankruptcy.
Yeah. So Home Depot is going to win, and the rest of them are going to be gone. And that is capitalism moving to socialism, because there's only going to be, like, you're going to Sam's Club and Walmart and a few others, these big ones will squash out the little guys. And that's what's happened. And then what they did is they had to have these rioter protesters go in and destroy, uh, not just if they went in and they looted and tore it all up, the business owners got back in, they rebuilt, they boarded up, they put all the stuff back in, hoping they'd make money, only to see it go, these rioters go back in and then burn it down. Um, and then, of course, they're not going to rebuild. That was the whole point of these riots. And if you remember when I was talking about the 1947 plan, that was the same thing. You go in, you intimidate, you scare, you spiritually bring the people down. And
Well,
anyone that opposes them, they will basically run them out of town. And that is a way to shame capitalists into quitting. And that's what we have seen in this last 2 years.
terror on feet, and they act as a revolutionary guard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this wealth tax wasn't about taxing the rich and paying their fair share, because they're not going to. They've got the loopholes. And not only that, but they're millionaires and billionaires, and they're not going to do it. So what it does is it was a facade. It was fake. It was, like I said, with the 47 thing. This was to manipulate um, the people into thinking there's this wealth tax going on, as they went and said, yeah, look over here at the wealth tax and be happy. And then we're going to come over here and we're going to destroy your capitalism. And I believe we're close to capitalism's gone. It's gone. Uh, how many households have we seen that were like 100,000 a year? that during the pandemic they lost their jobs, and they're down to maybe 50 or 30,000, taking a, a smaller paying job. And then you look at the middle class, they went to nothing. And then the poor, of course, they're not even going to work. We've got them, and we're handing them unemployment checks. And to remind you about this unemployment thing, if you are on unemployment, you get it for so many weeks. And when they cut it off, then you receive no more. Well, our government and seems to think, uh, when they come forward with the unemployment rates, they're like, "Oh, look, it's down." Well, how many people got dropped off the system because they received all that they could receive that's allotted for them? They don't tell us that, and that will make a difference with the unemployment rate. And what we're seeing is people starting to be dropped because they're no longer going to they didn't extend the unemployment. So now we're seeing all these people dropped, and they're going, hallelujah, look at this, look at all these jobs that's been filled, because that's where they twist it to make you think, because the unemployment rate's down, that these are all these jobs that are filled. So they just snookered us again, and on TV, and they know what they're doing, but they don't think anybody's smart enough to realize that maybe you or I may have collected unemployment one time in our life, and we know you fill it out, you have to go look for jobs, or you call it in, and once you're done with your 8 weeks or 7 weeks or whatever weeks, then you don't get no more. You have to go look for a job. And that's what they've done, to twist things to make us believe that they're doing better. But we know different. There's too many smart people in this world. So the wealth tax, uh, with the checks program of what they said is, once this wealth tax would help to build better, um, and it would make the Czechs' lives better. And the same way with Venezuela, they fed them the same line. This wealth tax, and what did they see? They seen all the prices go up, like we're seeing right now, and the wealth tax doesn't work because all it did was hurt our our food, our gas, our rent, anything that we're buying at a store. We have seen a huge increase, and that's what it causes, is them having to raise the prices. And who's raising the prices? Not the millionaires. They don't own businesses. They get our money. It's the middle class that have to. When they raised the minimum wage to $15 an hour, a lot of these little guys can't pay that, and now they're forced to. So what do? They're going to raise the prices on their menus, or raise the prices on goods. And see, that's what we've seen going on. And this happened the same way over in Czech. We've seen it in Venezuela. But you know what? It's the same plan. This was all written back then. So the whole thing is, now we're looking at the Green New Deal. And when you start looking at it and you start reading what the Green New Deal is, we're looking at exactly what socialism is. And you compare it back to this plan I was telling you about and these key points, you'll see the same thing in the Green New Deal. And then you see, when we get these guys on these talk shows or on the news, and they're saying, yeah, um, we need to promote an equal economic system. We need to have justice and equality. We need, that capitalism is really bad for us. And it's like, what? Wait a minute. I thought Green New Deal was like, save the whales and clean the water and the whole climate. But that's not what they're saying when they're on TV. And listen to them, folks. I know you hate listening to some of these guys, but if you see them on there and they're talking the Green New Deal, it's nothing about saving our planet. It's not. Because why? Because this is that plan. This is the socialist plan that is bringing down countries. Go ahead.
Also, if they use the term stakeholder, just like Klaus Schwab did 2 days ago,
Mm-hmm.
then it's part of the agenda to take America out of the equation so the
Mm-hmm.
globalists can try to take over the world.
Yes. And the thing about it is with this
They will
new
not vote.
with the new Green Deal, what got me was when it was first introduced, it was rejected. It was rejected. But now all of a sudden it's accepted. Who accepted it? They got to um, Congress and senators, the Republicans, and quite a few Democrats that did not want to go for this. And how did they get to them? Well, let me tell you a story, folks. My ladies at the Capitol one day was watching, and I'm not going to mention names. There was a few that were um, on the tough side of Senate and Congress that went office to office to office and threatened them. They said, "We will have rioters out front of your house till you change your mind. We will go after you. We will follow you." Remember what Maxine Waters said? Get them at the restaurants, get them at their house. It was that. That's what they were spouting and going. And do you think Capitol Police stopped them? No, they didn't. They went around until they threatened them and threatened them and threatened them. And I thought, huh. And this was a while back. And it wasn't until I seen a picture of Dianne Feinstein, and I can't remember who it was she had up against the wall with her finger in the lady's face. Was it Murkowski? You see,
Yeah.
everybody, you remember the picture, and
Yeah.
she was threatening her. And we don't know what was said, but according to my Capitol ladies, uh, she was physically shaking. They had to give her tranquilizers to get her to calm down after what Feinstein did to her that day. She couldn't even go into work for a couple days. She was scared to death. So, what was it that she said in her face? What did she threaten her with? We don't know. And I'm assuming Feinstein's probably don't even realize, doesn't have a clue what she did a few years back. So, this original Green New Deal, it's all about inequalities. It's all about. It's not about the Green New Deal, because if so, when they pass that trillion dollar packages for the Green New Deal, none of it. What we gave money to? What was it? The Kennedy Center, um, music center or opera place. We gave it to this person and that person. Very little went. When we have got oceans that are so full of garbage and garbage islands that it is warmed the oceans up. Now, think on that, folks. What are they saying is going on in the oceans? Oh, they're warming up. Well, you know what? If they would go clean the garbage out, you know, and do you know what they pay people to put? And they gave $8.1 million to cleanup of our oceans and our beaches. Well, what they did was they put it into looking at the root cause of why the garbage is there. And it took people volunteering to go out and start cleaning it up. That's how they handle it. Or what are they doing? Um, Oh, I could go on and on and on with this, with the whole garbage island and warming up our oceans, and they want to spray things over the top of us that causes a greenhouse effect. And me and you went over the whole with what's going on with the whole greenhouse effect and what this whole climate thing is about. They have lied and they have lied and they have lied. But when you look at this plan, it's just identical to it. And it's the thing is me and William was talking about this. There's one problem that this administration has is the people want the freedom. We're about freedom. We're about being able to do what we want, make our own decisions. Even the Democrats don't like big government. We don't want big government. That is the problem. And I think that's why they're pushing this through so fast and so hard on us. that it is it so it covers up us even looking into where they're getting these ideas. Because I always thought it was Obama. And when I started looking at this plan, I realized this is a plan that they're using over and over and over again. And they are taking down countries with, for what? The New World Order, of course. This is something that has been you. Now, William said 60, we started seeing it, right? And he's correct. This is something that was implemented, and then it was like, okay, where do we go next? It's like
It started with Tavistock affecting the artists and whatnot out of Laurel Canyon, came out of Oxford and Cambridge on how to change people's perception of art, and then it became a movement against the war in Vietnam by '68, and it's always been about changing the culture.
mm-hmm, well, it's been this way all along with the Democrat Party. Um, they just found a plan that was put together, and the thing about this is this plan is when they traced it back from Czech, and they changed it back over, or they traced it back over to the Nazis, and then from the Nazis it continued on, but the keeper of the plan was actually none other than Klaus Schwab and George Soros. And so this is why we didn't hear about it for a long time. But some people tend to get into some of these little organizations and they start realizing they don't want to be a part of this. So it was a whistleblower that got a hold of this plan and was able to get the copies of it, and let it be let known. I believe it was in um, 2015 that this started coming out, and people
Ellie,
started. Yeah, go ahead.
so Klaus Schwab and Soros are the face of this globalism in Europe, but the people behind them are the aristocracy and the royalty of Europe.
Hmm. Yeah. Now, one of the last things in that plan that we seen was the illegals. Um, they couldn't do it in Czechoslovakia, and they couldn't really do it in Venezuela. But what they had found out that really, really worked was when the people fled Czech, they went into the European countries, and we started to see the falter of the um, um, European countries falling due to the massive amount of people they had to take care of. And they were already coming out of a war over there. So it was very hard on the Europeans. And they found out that this worked, it weakened them. And that was one of the biggest weaknesses of the countries. And it seems that they did the same thing over and over again. They did it to the UK, it's weakened them. They've been doing it to us, it's weakened us, and Canada. Everywhere that the illegals of today are going to these countries, it's weakened us. And look at what it's done to the states individually. It's gotten to where it's bringing each one of the states down individually. And so this is something that has worked for them. Um, and of course, they're going to keep bringing it on in. The thing about it is population control is one of the last things. And population control is very big. And we heard about this from Klaus Schwab a long time ago. And we always thought they were just going to come through and kill us with a pandemic or something. No, it's population control, because there's so many that they do expect to die out of all of this, of hunger or sickness or some other reasons, suicide. Um, but they got to have a certain amount of people to work for them, the slaves, the ones that's going to do their farming. And as we've seen farms after farm being taken over by the government, it's now starting to make a lot of sense. And this plan is something that we can stop. And this morning I said we have to look at what their mistakes, that the mistakes they have made, because it's a weakness. And you hear all the time on the news and hear from us that everything they've tried has fell apart. Everything they've tried is fallen apart. And that's where I say it's the freedom that the people want. It's the Christianity that people want. It's, I want America the way it was, is what people want. And that is something they can't break us of. And I can we all stand up and just say no more? Can we look at them and, if they come and they want to get in our face, tell them, please don't do that. We're not like that. And would you please get out of my face? More than likely, they're not going to. But we need to really stand up for the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. And most people don't even know what's in the Constitution. They do. Maybe take a look at it someday, and not only that, but the Bill of Rights, because this is what scares them, is that, and not only that, but the will of the people to want Christianity and freedoms, and not a big government. This is where it's faltering. And when I seen Klaus Schwab uh, this last weekend, he's freaking out. He's seeing this plan isn't working with the United States. Why? Because they are now starting to see that 30% of the Democrat voters have now turned away from their party. They are now seeing close to 50% of the illegals coming into this country saying, oh, no, 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 no. We just ran from socialism. They lied to us, and they're turning on them. If they think in a few years that these immigrants are going to vote for them, they're not going to, because they're promoting socialism. Those people know all about socialism. Um, so this is a plan. Like I started this morning and started the show and done the show on there. This is an actual plan that came out in between 45 and 47, of how a country can use the socialist plan to take down another country. It's used as like a war material. Um, to bring in a dictator and then you take down this country. But unfortunately, it's being used by the globalist to take down countries for a one world order. I hope you guys really learned a lot tonight. Um, and um, the only thing I ask, folks, is I really want you to contribute to the show. Not money. How I want you to contribute, I want you to share this. I want you to share this with your friends and family. I don't want money. I don't want super chat. I don't want monetized or none of that. I want you to get the message out, because the more we get this out, the easier it's going to be for Republicans or even Democrats to deal with what's going on, to know that this is a plan and this is big government. And if we only stand up against these guys and not vote for them, not vote for their agenda, they're going to fall. Um, William, you want to say anything else before we close? Anything on all that we've talked about tonight? Because it was a lot. There's a lot to absorb here.
So the people of Europe fundamentally do not understand the American psyche. They're people who are wed to their land, to their place. Americans come from every place on earth. We're the least bigoted of any place on earth. We're the most radical factions from every place on earth. And we're not easily stopped. It's why we're here. And the people who have this area of place in their minds don't understand that America isn't a place, it's an idea. And we won't give it up.
The freedom to think for ourselves and what we want. That's being a conservative. Um, and lastly, folks, be kind to one another. And if you just have to be very patient with a lot of these Democrats and realize they're very embarrassed of what they're seeing and what they voted for. Go easy on them, unless they're going to get in your face. But I'm talking family members and friends that we have lost due to uh, the divide. And, if the Democrats had it their way, we would be like Ukraine. And we would be fighting the people across the street. Like I mentioned this morning, the little old lady. That's what they want. They want to cause a civil war again. But they can't get it. They haven't been able to push us to fight. I mean, they're to the point where they're those ones that, when two people are going to get into a fight and they really don't want to fight, that someone goes up and pushes one into the other person to get them to. That's what they're doing. And we can't fall for it. And neither can the Democrats. The Democrats got to see they can't fall for this either. And I believe, I hear all the time, yeah, they're waking up. Yes, they are waking up. So expect Democrats to come back full force this next year. Because remember what I said, it took 3 years for them to take down and make a country socialist. And the road just from socialism always leads to communism. And so pay attention. I'm not saying listen to me. I mean, maybe there's other people out there that have platforms that talk about the same thing, but listen to them. But I want you to realize I'm going to do more shows like this. Um, I've come up with a lot of really great ideas, and I want to do more shows like this to inform you guys of what's going on. It's no good mulling around in my little brain here, or in my notebook. And I'm going through my notebook, and I'm going to start bringing this stuff out and telling you very to where everybody can understand it fully. And if you have any questions, you always can ask. And I'm not going to charge you for it. You can even email me. This is something I want to push for investigator news, that we start exposing all of these corruptions. And it's how I started to begin with. I got into the news stuff, and it's just to let everybody know the stuff that's going on that you don't hear about. That's what I want to know. I want to hear the things that the mainstream media isn't talking about that I should know about, and that's what I pull for you. But I want to do more shows like this to teach you guys to what's really going on, and without getting banned myself. So, um, William, I think this was a good show, and I knew bringing you aboard would help with explaining a lot of this.
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for the opportunity. And what America is about is taking care of our neighbors.
Mm-hmm. So, all right, folks, that is it for tonight. And please share this, and rewatch it and listen to that plan again. And you'll start seeing that what they did in 47 is what they're doing to us right now. And we know what the plan is now. You know what the plan is. And you can fight every tooth and nail not to let this socialist crap enter into our lives. And it's not really about the administration. It's more about what the globalists and those that are in our administrations are now settling for. Um, and I think that's what it is. They're settling for it, or something has happened. Something happened, like William said, in 1960 when things started changing for not the good. And I believe it was after Kennedy was shot that we started seeing this whole agenda start being built um, to go to a global society, and for all of us to be the same. And you know what? It's not going to happen. We got to get in there. We got to vote, and we got to get. We got to be able to take our country back. Um, anyway, um, tomorrow is news and trivia, and I love doing trivia. So tomorrow night, come on back for trivia, and of course, William's going to be in there playing. Uh, him and Susan got this little thing going that they're see who's better.
Playing and losing. Susan just wipes me out.
Yeah. So, all right. So, with that, folks, um, I will see you guys tomorrow night. And please share and subscribe. If you're watching us for the first time, subscribe because there's going to be more like this. If you're over in Facebook, follow and please share and hit that like button. So we will see everyone tomorrow night. And God bless and have a very safe Memorial Weekend. Bye-bye, folks. Okay, William, we'll see you later.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it was great. Yeah. So, okay, well, I'm going to get out there and cook, get us some dinner.